Hello booktube, hello book friends, welcome back to my channel and another tag video, and this is the trick or treat tag. So posting this hopefully just in time for Halloween, and this was a original tag created by Heather at AlansReads and Meg at Books Off the Beaten Path, and I was tagged by Pat at Book Chat with Pat. There are only 2 prompts, so what's not to like about a tag with only 2 prompts? The first is to pick 5 books which you have read that you did not turn out to be what you hoped for, like getting candy, but it's not the kind you like. Tell us the reason this book didn't work for you. So those are the tricks. And then the treats are 5 books that you have read that were the best reading experiences you've had. So I'm going to pick books that I've read relatively recently. I think most of them are books from this year, although some of them are way back at the start of the year. And like Pat, I'm going to do the tricks first, because I feel I want to also end my video on some good news rather than drag everybody down with the books I didn't like. Some of my tricks are probably quite controversial. Certainly I've had comments about some of them, and unfortunately I don't have any, just checking, I don't have any of the physical books for my tricks, because they were books I disliked so much that I've donated them to our village book exchange. So you'll have to make do with, you know, an image on the screen. So let's get started. Tricks first. The first of my tricks is a book that is exceedingly popular, and I really hated is a strong word, really disliked it. It would have been a DNF but for the circumstances that I was reading it in. And I was reading this book with my friend MJ for our show Shelf Talkers, and it is Donna Tartt's The Secret History. I really didn't like this book. I thought it was full of vile, horrible characters who I mean, fair play to Donna Tartt for the writing. You know, she managed to really get under my skin and make me dislike her characters to the extent where I wanted to DNF the book. The only reason I didn't DNF the book was because I was, as I say, reading it with my friend MJ for Shelf Talkers. It was the first book of, I think we've done now 4 or 5 different books. It was the first book. We hadn't discussed what we were going to do if we got to a book that we didn't like, but we have agreed since that it's okay to DNF a book if you don't like it, but I really didn't like it. It was a chunky book as well. I think it was something like nearly 500 pages. So it was quite a painful read as well. So yeah, the Donna Tartt, The Secret History by Donna Tartt, to me was an out and out trick. The second book is one that I read recently for the October reading event, and that was Kraken by China Mieville. Again, a well-written book, but I liked it to start with, but the author just kept throwing more and more things. It's kind of, I suppose you call it urban fantasy, and he was just throwing things in, you know, different like, you know, the whole thing centered around a stolen giant squid that was in theory stolen by cult members, and there was the issue of, well, how do you get a giant squid out of a museum with nobody seeing you, which was an intriguing puzzle. But then it was like, well, how you get people from, one place to another without seeing them. And it just got a bit too much. There were just too many tropes, too many ideas of, fantasy and supernatural. And I did finish it. Again, I finished it, but it just wasn't for me, wasn't the book for me. I think other people have spoken quite highly of it. So, it's a me thing, not a book thing. So, take that with a pinch of salt. The third book, I was quite surprised that I didn't like this, and I still struggle a little bit to understand why. It was Enchanted Ground by Stephen Lovatt. And this centered around, it's basically a natural history book, stroke memory biography, written by the author, about the death of his grandmother and kind of his feelings around grief and so on. Now, I really didn't get on with it. I think possibly it was because I read it not long after. I actually bought it around the time that I lost someone very close to me. And I didn't read it at the time for that reason, because I thought, no, don't want to read a book about grief when I'm grieving. But I did read it subsequently, and I think possibly that still was in my mind. And I just got quite angry with the author, and ultimately didn't finish the book. So again, a book that your mileage with may vary to mine. I very much do believe that certain books are best read at certain times, and that was the wrong book, probably at the wrong time for me. And where are we? Book number 4. Now, this was again a book I read for an event. It was the group read for Holmes is Where the Heart Is back in February, and it was The Fifth Heart by Dan Simmons. And Dan Simmons has written quite a lot of famous books, including The Terror, amongst others. And I was quite intrigued by, this was putting Sherlock Holmes with another historical historical figure from literature, and other characters like Mark Twain and American presidents and things like that. I just didn't get on with it. I didn't like the way Simmons portrayed Sherlock Holmes. I didn't like the way he kind of talked down various characters in the book, and ultimately didn't enjoy it at all. I think I didn't enjoy it to the extent where I actually put other people off reading it. I did film a review, which I've never posted, purely for that reason. I think, my feelings about that particular book were so strong in a negative sense, that I didn't want to kind of, put people off of reading it just for my opinion. I'm not afraid to say I didn't like a book, obviously. I'm talking about 5 that I didn't particularly like. And, that was one, and again, Sherlock Holmes is a character. Arthur Conan Doyle's characters are quite dear to me. And, I think maybe somebody coming along and, although it is a pastiche novel, it's supposed to take a different point of view to an extent. It was just ridiculous, some of the things that were in the book. So yeah, didn't like it, didn't post the review video in the end. Wouldn't recommend it, wouldn't read it again. And then finally, for tricks, a very recent read. book that I've been really looking forward to getting to. A book in a series that I've really enjoyed, and that was Dan Brown's The Secret of Secrets. So his recent release that came out, I think, a month or two ago, it wasn't a bad book. It is the kind of definition of getting candy, but it's not the sort you like. So it's a book by an author I've enjoyed in the past, and in this instance, there was less of the kind of puzzle solving enigmas that have been in Dan Brown's previous Robert Langdon books. This was more kind of just straight out kind of go from A to B to C to D, and everything will work out. And I didn't hate it, I just didn't enjoy it as much as I've enjoyed his previous books. So that's my 5 tricks. Now, my 5 treats. Let's get it out of the way first. You know what's coming. Treat number 1, my friend Alexandre Dumas and The Count of Monte Cristo. This book, why do I like this book so much? Couple of reasons. One, it's a great book. I really love it. It's a huge, great big 1,400 page book, but it reads just so quickly. It's got a great story. It's a tale of revenge, of false imprisonment and escape, and about doing the right thing. And I also like it because I think it was, although it's not the first classic I've read recently, it really got me back into reading classics. So I'm reading a Dumas at the moment. I'm reading the sequel to The Three Musketeers 20 years later, or 20 years after. I can't remember which way around it is. And I'm thoroughly enjoying that, and I'll talk about that in a future video. I will carry on reading the rest of what are called the D'Artagnan romances. So there's 3 more books in that series, including The Man in the Iron Mask. Just really got into, I don't know whether it's Dumas in particular, but I also read Les Miserables this year. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Dracula, Frankenstein. I'm really enjoying reading the classics again. Don't know, and I credit that with The Count of Monte Cristo with that. The second book, again, one I'm going back and reading and rereading books by the author Peter Straub, who was a contemporary of Stephen King's, but is probably less well known, and sadly passed away a few years ago. And he just writes really well, and he knows how to finish a story, which I think sometimes is what people criticize Stephen King for. So the book I am picking as my second treat is Peter Straub's Ghost Story, which I read earlier this year, and it centers around a group of middle-aged older men who have a storytelling society called the Chowder Club, and they meet once a week, once a month, whatever, and just tell stories. And some of those stories are true, and some of them are made up, and so on. And anyway, linked to one of those stories is a malevolent thing that starts to kill them one by one. And this is how the story plays out and how they figure out what's going on, and so on and so forth. And ghost story sums it up perfectly. You know, it is kind of like a malevolent evil spirit, perhaps is the best way to describe it, who is out to get revenge. So yeah, really recommend that. And you know, as I say, I'm trying to reread all of them. I think I'm right in saying that they are now all being republished, which is good news for me because it means I don't have to necessarily try and hunt down copies of books that are out of print. And there is also a recent live, which I will link to in the description, from Emma Straub's, from her bookshop that she owns. She is Peter Straub's daughter. She's also an author. And they did a kind of Halloween celebration of Peter Straub in the last few days. And I'll link to the live video below if you're interested. So yeah, that's number 2. Number 3, well, I mentioned Peter Straub and in companion with Stephen King, so I have a Stephen King. This is a reread for me that I reread earlier this year. Again, trying to go back through some of the Stephen Kings that I read a long time ago or have never read. And I reread Pet Semetary. It was every bit as dark and scary, and yeah, just what people really, I think, liked about the early Stephen Kings. And this for me was fantastic. I'd forgotten quite a lot of the story. It centers around basically a pet cemetery which is on the property of a house that's recently been bought by a couple and their family, and their young children, and there is a part of the cemetery which is able to reincarnate what's buried there. And without giving too much away, there is some reincarnation and various things horrible and horrific happen. And it is a really fantastic read. So yeah, that's my second one. Third one, sorry. My fourth, I don't have a physical copy of. I read it on ebook, but it is P.D. James's Devices and Desires, which is an inspector, or was he a commander by that point, Adam Dalgliesh mystery. So P.D. James wrote a whole series of books around the character of Adam Dalgliesh. This one, I think, it's the best of the series that I've read. I haven't finished reading the series. I've got 2 or 3 left, I think. But to date, this is the best of the series. Centers around a murder when Adam Dalgliesh is in Norfolk at his aunt's house, who has recently died, and he has inherited the house, and so he is there trying to decide whether to keep the house or sell it or what he's going to do. And there is a murder, and although he is not responsible for investigating, he inevitably gets drawn into an extent. And it's just brilliant crime fiction story. As I say, one of the best I read. The next one I read, I got, and I didn't enjoy quite so much. I got some really interesting comments on the video that when I talked about it. So I hope if that person is watching this one, I did enjoy Devices Jars. It was really good. So yeah, that's one that I really enjoyed. And then final book is a book of poetry. I've been also, as well as classics, been getting back into poetry this year, partly through my love of war poetry and conflict journalism and poetry. but also other poets. And I've been discovering new poets by watching Poetry Thursday, and Pat, Book Chat with Pat in particular, has mentioned a number of poets who I've kind of gone on to look at in more detail. And one of those is a poet called Billy Collins, and I've got The Trouble with Poetry and Other Poems. Now, I will admit this was a cover by. I was looking for an anthology of Billy Collins's poetry, and it was the cover that made me buy this one, pure and simple. I would have bought any other Billy Collins if it had that cover on it, just because I love the bear and the rabbit together. And this, I haven't really talked much about this on the channel, and I really should do some of my favourites from this collection, I think, when I get a chance. But yeah, I really love this. I need to sit down and go through it properly again. And yeah, so perhaps when I next do a Poetry Thursday video, and I know I've missed a few weeks, I maybe will do it on Billy Collins. So yeah, that's it. That's my 5 treats. So, thank you, Pat, for tagging me. Thank you to Heather and Meg for creating the tag. It's a lot of fun. Hopefully I will get this out just before Halloween. I obviously need to do some editing to get covers and things on, but it's been a really fun tag to do. And as always, if you have been, thank you to you guys for watching, and I will speak to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.